Before we get into part 2 of my conversation with Carol Lucas, if you haven't seen part 1, you can find the link in the description below. But did you know that Carol has a master's and a PhD in social work? It's true. And in part 2, she shares the premise of her dissertation and its relationship to how most of us show up in the work world and the conditioning that we don't even realize we have when it comes to asking for that raise or negotiating that higher salary. Now, I feel like I need to give a little bit of a disclaimer for the rest of the conversation because Dr. Lucas makes some broad statements that are meant to highlight her finer points. So it's assumed that you already have an appreciation for the limited time that we have in a conversation like this to qualify every statement that's made. And if what I'm saying doesn't make any sense, don't worry, it will soon enough. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and consider subscribing if you're new here. Now, without further ado, let's jump back into my conversation with Dr. Carol Lucas. I've been of the mindset, since I've been conscious of my money mindset, that, a lot of the onus is on social workers to, just like you said, not take what we're given, like command higher, and also understand our value and what we're bringing to the table. So I would love to hear how you articulate that for yourself and what you've been able to do and like how you helped our mutual friend, understand this as well.
So the one thing that I noticed about all of that, what you said, it's not social workers because it's genderized. It's women social worker because men social workers don't seem to have a problem ascending into the profession. If you notice most agencies or any agencies that have a lot of power, they're headed by men. Mm-hmm. Men don't seem to have a problem asserting themselves, right? We raise men different than women. We raise women to be, and hopefully it's changing because I know my girls are very different. My girls have they're very socially conscious, but they also know their skill set and they also know their worth. Mm-hmm. So we raise girls, a lot of times we raise girls to be caregivers, to be everybody else first, me last, which the social work profession is ripe for exploiting that. Mm-hmm. We raise boys to be more confident. Mm-hmm. We raise boys to not think twice about asking for what they want. Mm-hmm. If you think about sexuality, even in heterosexual couples, or we raise girls to be heterosexual, right? We raise boys to be heterosexual as well. But we have this myth of the virginity and purity around women, mm-hmm. that women are giving. They're always supposed to give of themselves. So think about virginity. It's like this prize that you give to the winner, right? Mm-hmm. Where we don't naturally or normally teach women about pleasure, about their own sexuality. So a lot of women tend to not come to their own sexual identity until later in life. I work for a university and I'm the director of the counseling and support service there. And not every single, but a lot of women, we always ask them about their sexual debut, men too, but we ask them about what was the quality or how was your first sexual experience? And many students report basically it's something to get past. Right? Mm. It's something they gave their partner in a straight relationship in exchange for affection, in exchange for the relationship. And that's really what my dissertation was centered on. How we sexualize women, but at the same time, we don't allow them to be sexual. Mm-hmm. And then we ask them, well, what were you taught about sexuality and what were you taught about pleasure? When you were taught about mm-hmm. the birds and the bees, nothing, mm-hmm. they're taught about biology. So there's layers and layers and layers on that. And I can talk for hours on that, but we carry that into our professional life, mm-hmm. because if we're raised that way, we're raised to be deferential to authority, right? Mm-hmm. The good girl theme, right? Because we're taught to behave. We're not taught to be powerful. If you look at what goes on in our government, every woman who asserts herself is vilified and demonized. If you look at all the Disney characters, every strong woman is a villain, right? So look at the Little Mermaid, for example. Ursula. What did Ursula do wrong? She didn't do anything wrong. She told Ariel, look, if you want to be with this person, I can arrange that for you, but it's going to cost you. You have a price to pay. You're going to have to give up your greatest talent, your greatest gift, right? So that's a terrible thing. Ariel could have turned around and said, you know what? Forget it. I'll find somebody down here under the sea. I don't need to have somebody above the sea. But Ariel said, no, I need to be with this man. So I will give up everything to be with this man. But in the cartoon or in the movie, it's Ursula who's vilified. She's painted, she's fat shamed, she's big, she's ugly. Look at the way she's painted. But she didn't do anything wrong, right? And I even said to my brother, you know, look at this girl. She gave up her greatest gift to be with a man. And what are we teaching little girls? And my brother said, no, she didn't. She gave it up for feet. And I'm like, I don't think so. So think about how now little girls now, a great book that I recommend anybody who's raising a girl. It's called Cinderella Ate My Daughter. No, Cinderella Ate My Daughter. It's a really good book. It's written by a feminist. And how do you raise a girl and allow her to have the whole, you know, princess experience, but at the same time, teach her about, you know, power and where her power is. So all of this stuff becomes subliminally programmed, right? And it becomes part of our whole identity. And it's so conditioned into us that we don't even think about that. We bring that into negotiations. We bring that everywhere we go. So how do you negotiate when you go for a job? You do your homework. You find out, first of all, I would find out gender-wise, what are the salary breakdowns? Because that data is out there. And you will see there's always a discrepancy for what men get paid or what women get paid. Know what the salary, what the market is for that job. Then what you're going to do is you're going to find out, make a list of your skill sets. What are you going to bring to this job? How are you an asset for this job? Why should they pay you the money that you're asking for? When they ask you what your salary needs are, never say, this is what I'm starting at. Always ask them to make an offer. Say, well, what is your offer? If they make an offer and their offer is either really below your salary range or it's above your salary range, it means that you're not asking for enough money. So you're going to bump it up at least $10,000 or $15,000. And your response should always be, that's a great start. I appreciate it. But this is where I think that this job needs to be. This is the amount, this is the value of the work. So you set the value of the work. You can never be desperate. You can never say, I have to have this job. You don't have to have any job. You don't. You have a skill set out there. So you can say, and you can be able to be ready to walk away. You have to believe that you are worth it. You can always come down in your salary, but it's a negotiation. Their job is to get you for as cheap as possible. Their job is to save money. Your job is to make a living. So make sure that in that negotiation, you have your facts straight. You don't want to go in there thinking, thank you so much. Please, sir, I would like some more, right? We don't beg for anything because we are professionals. We have a skill set that no one else has. We will bring things to this job that will enhance this job, not only the job, but also enhance the organization. So you have to go in and sell it. And you have to sell it basically as if you have value, because you absolutely do. Because men are typically raised to do that, women aren't.
I think what you've just said is going to transform a lot of people's, approach when they do either go look for a job or maybe even negotiate for a job they already have, negotiate a higher salary. And I think though, for me, I remember, I haven't looked for a job in a long time, but I remember, when you look for a job, the salary is either published somewhere, just the salary range, right?
Yes.
And I remember, especially when I started in the profession, thinking, okay, well, this is all they pay. And learning later, no, that's all they would pay you,
Right.
but they will pay higher. So for those that maybe didn't know, now they know. But what else, or what do social workers need to know when they are going into these spaces and maybe see the salary range? Yeah, what do they need to know about negotiating? What else do they need to know, I guess?
So the first thing they need to know is, what is the number that you're willing to live with? What is the number that you're willing to accept? And that is your number. Mm-hmm. That is the number that you take. Mm-hmm. They need to know, what is the market, meaning how saturated is the market, right? Mm-hmm. Are there a lot of people applying for this job? That might not be the job you're going to go for. So what is the competition out there for a particular job? What skill set do you bring? Now, it's not just your social work skill set. Everybody knows, as social workers, we've all been evaluated in our field evaluations. We can do this. First of all, you can't quantify empathy. You can't But what is your skill set outside of that, right? Are you really good? Are you really good at researching, right? Do you get online and just spend hours and hours and hours researching articles? Do you understand how to read a study, a published study? If not, get your research books out and figure that again. Can you talk about evidence-informed practice in a way that you know what you're speaking about, right? Can you talk about the value of assessment in an agency, right? Know the buzzwords, and those buzzwords are going to be located in that job description. What's important. And then you have to be specific about examples of how you've done that particular job, what the outcomes were. So you really have to drill down into it. You have to be willing to not be afraid to brag. But come off in a way, and here's the rub. Women make the mistake of approaching something the way a man would approach it. So meaning being aggressive, right? Which we would say a man is assertive. You don't have to be aggressive. You can be yourself, but you can be firm. You can be confident, right? Without being arrogant. And that's important. So let me go back to my friend who contacted me. She had joined, very similar to my experience with my friend, where her and this other provider had come up with this idea because there was a lack of really specific, relevant professional development for social workers outside of clinical stuff. But more about professional development, meaning developing the whole person. And so they came up with this idea. They worked very hard. And so my friend had negotiated what she thought was a good faith contract with this person, but there was no contract. So she trusted this person to come up with, to agree to those things that they talked about. But the things that they talked about were vague, and the company took off really fast. So this person was given, kind of a, what I equate is a stipend, a very low salary, in anticipation of having shares, right? So when I hear someone say shares, I'll own shares of something. Well, shares of zero is zero, right? So she did it. There was no negotiation of a firm contract. And the contract she did sign, as I said, was very vague. So she needed additional money to live on. She had to have this money, because you have to live, you got to pay your bills.
You got to live.
So she went to this person and she asked this person for more money. And this person told her, I can't give you more money. So she came to me afterwards, all this had happened, and she said, I don't know what to do. I said, are you kidding me? This person would have no business at all had you not been here. You did all of the legwork, which is what social workers do. Mm-hmm. I said, you need to make a list of what you do for this company, the value you bring to this company, and basically what I just talked about. Mm-hmm. And you need to come up with a number that you're willing to walk away from this practice. I said, you walking away from this practice will cost them. You have to be able to gamble. You can't be afraid to gamble. You have to believe in yourself that much that you are willing to gamble. Mm-hmm. So she turned around and we worked on things, and she had a conversation, and she goes, I really don't want to leave the practice. I said, well, then he's got you. I said, if you are not willing to say to him, look, you know, no hard feelings, love you lots, but I got to leave. I got to move on. I got to take my skills and take my experience and go build it for somebody else. I said, because if you build it for this person, you could build it for somebody else. I said, first of all, you don't even have a do not compete clause in that contract. So I said, so there's nothing stopping you from going to work with someone else and building the same exact thing. So she said, okay. So she said that she would sit down with him. She would have this conversation. She took copious notes. And I said, and have that conversation with him. At the time, this person was traveling all over Europe. So she had to wait until he came back from Europe. Meanwhile, she's holding down the fort. So that is an example of where, you know, a lot of women are trained to be workaholics, again, for crumbs, because they see themselves as a worker. They don't see themselves as an equal partner in the success of that business. Now, that might sound like socialistic, right? That the workers have all the power, but they don't recognize that they have the power because they're told, you know, there's infighting. That's why so many companies are union busting. That's why we have so many states that are right to work state, because if workers ever got together and said, this is not acceptable, we're walking, the owners of that, you know, business, let's say, are out of luck. So it's recognizing your power. So I haven't talked to my friend in a while, but she didn't say it didn't go well. So I'm assuming that the conversation.
Oh, she said to me that you helped her loads.
So that means it worked out well.
Yeah, evidently it worked out really well, which is why she recommended that we're having this conversation now. And I know I want to take it back a little bit, because I know you said when you were looking into a new degree and social work, you didn't want to go the clinical track, but I also know you have a private practice.
I do.
So, and what I also want to know is, you know, you told your kids, you know, you wouldn't be making as much money, but I assume, you know, I know you're not, you know, in poverty. So I would love to hear too, how you've been able to, you know, translate translate your knowledge into a lifestyle that still supports you and represents you in the way that you know you're valuable.
Okay, so I'll just go back to my kids a little bit and what happened there. I don't have the boat. I don't have the house, the big house anymore. I don't have the Suburban. I actually had a grad student that was working with me who talked me into a Prius. You know, she's like,
very economical.
Your carbon footprint is way too big.
Yeah.
And I'm cheap too. So I'm like, well, yeah, I get like 50 miles to the gallon. So I had to really, really evaluate my lifestyle. And I had to break it down to want and need. Right? So that is an important thing. It is an important thing to decide, what do you want and what do you need? Because there are things that we say we need that we don't need. Right? And that goes in the want pile. And it doesn't mean you ever buy wants, but you buy them after your needs are taken care of. Right? So I scaled back my lifestyle. Now, you know, as a side note, I still have those friends who have those big boats and those big houses, and so I'm not afraid to use their stuff.
Yeah,
you know, I'm not afraid to swim in their pool. Yeah. I'm not afraid to go to their house and drink very expensive liquor. Yeah, and I'm not afraid to fundraise with them. You know, so I use my influence in that respect. With my children were young enough that I was able to catch them at an area. at a time in their life where I could pivot with them. So for example, I used to take them with me to the nursing home when I used to visit these people, because we would have to go there on Thanksgiving and Christmas before we went to anybody's house. Now, my older daughter said she has like what she calls PTSD, because she said, you used to make me kiss those old people that smelled and, but they learned about people that weren't like them, but not in a way that was demeaning. It wasn't in a way of where, a lot of times wealthy people will help those people because it gives them a feel-good feeling. And, like take pictures of it and put it on YouTube, put videos of it. If you're going to help, you're going to help. You don't need to publicize that, because then the motivation is really for attention. So my kids started to develop, within their own lifestyle, a lifestyle of service. I was also, because I was raised blue collar, I was raised to be a worker. I work very hard, but I recognized that I needed to work hard for myself, not work hard for somebody else. So what I did was, when I went to social work school, I found the school that I went to, because I had all this vast experience, was a general practice school, right? It taught you to be a general practitioner. So there were clinical courses, there were courses in, programming, there were courses in research, and I loved every single class. I remember I ran into a student, much younger, and don't forget, I was a non-traditional student. So I was back in school with all these 20-year-olds, 25-year-olds. And I had run into a colleague later on. She goes, "Oh, I remember you. You were the only one in the class that did the reading." I was like, "What?" I've since gone on and attained a PhD in social work, because I just I'm very curious and I'm very interested in learning. But the learning that I did and the research that I did was for me. It wasn't for someone else, but it helped me. It helped enhance my skill set. So my first job, I'm still working at the same place where my first job at a social work school was for the same university. And I worked in the department of, at the time it was called Disability Support Services, which was Student Access Office, it's called now. And it was making sure the university stayed on this side of the American Disabilities Act and made sure that we ensured equal access for all students with disabilities. So that's what the front side is. The back side of it is, if you think about it, that's pretty messed up, that you have to have someone in charge of making sure that a university follows the federal mandate. So what we need to know in social work, again, is nobody does anything unless they're forced to do it. So that was my job. And when I negotiated my salary, again, I went to it and saying, this is what is involved in this job. This is what I'm willing to pay. Now, the salary they came at was like maybe a quarter of what I was making. Oh, you're kidding me, right? I said, this is not a living wage. This is not for me. Now, I had worked in the job as interim, so they already saw what I can do. They already saw the changes that I could make. So my leaving that job, they would lose, it would be value that they were losing. So they did come up in salary. One of the things that you need to have when you're approaching a job is